Hello, my name is Mike Ignatoski, the creator of the BlueLynx Hockey Spreadsheet, the spreadsheet that uses Excel programming to help you conveniently manage your tabletop hockey league project, including the standings, the schedule, but most of all, the player and team stats for your entire league. BlueLynx was created to help you get more enjoyment out of your tabletop hockey projects by giving you more time to play the games and look over the stats instead of painstakingly calculating them and entering them into a spreadsheet. In this video, I want to cover how to create a custom league, which is the third type of league and for sure the most versatile of all the three types of leagues. But I'm only going to really cover one variation of a custom league. But um, I think you'll understand the different parts and different options you have when you create a custom league, because it's pretty much it's very open and you can almost make anything you want. So here's the spreadsheet when after I downloaded it and launched it. It shows me this welcome screen, and I mainly have two options here: to upgrade an existing spreadsheet or create a BlueLynx league or do something else. But we're going to create BlueLynx league, so that's what I'm going to do. So let's get started on that. Click on that, just like the other videos I talked about with creating leagues. It drops you to this league help sheet or tab down here at the bottom and talks a little bit about what your options are for creating a league. I'm going to close this here, and here's what we're going to essentially follow is this custom league here, so you can always use this as a reference when you're making your league. But I just want to refer to it here, but I'm not going to be going back to this much, as we're going to be just kind of doing it live and you can follow along. So let's see how it works. Okay, so we're going to go where all leagues start, which is the league sheet or the league tab or league worksheet, whatever you want to call it. But down here on the bottom are the sheets. I'll click on the league. And here again is this kind of unorganized but totally functional league sheet where you can create your league. And for a custom league, the best way to start, as far as visualizing it or planning it or whatever, is to figure out how your standings are going to look. And so for this demonstration, I've created this extra sheet, sheet 1, to show what I'm looking at or some options. So for this particular custom league, I want to have 8 teams that I want to put in my league from different years and different eras. So, and I showed this here in 2 different ways. So I'm going to call this league my Super 8 league. You can see here. And there are 2 ways to look at it. I could either kind of set it up what I'll call with 2 conferences. Now in BlueLynx terminology, it uses the term sub-league, which is kind of a generic term, but in hockey you can think of that as a conference. So this would have these 2 sub-leagues or 2 conferences, left and a right. That's how the conferences are. They're called that because that's the way they would look in your standings. So think about how you want your standings to look. I could have this 8-team custom league with these 2 groups of 4 teams. I could have it kind of a left and a right, and so in this scenario, I would have 2 conferences, and within each conference, there's just 1 division. Or I could have effectively, 1 conference is just like everybody's in your 1 league, and you have 2 divisions. So that's what this bottom picture or setup is trying to show is if I have 1 league, and also in the BlueLynx world, you have to have at least 1 sub-league. So this would really be, I have my league, I have 1 sub-league or 1 conference, and in that conference I have these 2 divisions. So in this scenario, your conference doesn't really mean anything. The name of your league is what it is, and you really have just these 2 divisions. But under the hood, BlueLynx still sees, oh, you have a league, you have one sub-league, and you have two divisions in it. And so when you look at your standings, you'll see kind of them on one on top of the other. If you make it like this, or if you go with the two conferences, there'll be a left and a right, like this. So, and how you want to do that, that's up to you. It doesn't really matter at all. Um, so I'm going to choose this top option, but that doesn't mean that's right. But the idea here is that you lay out how you want your standings to look, and that should guide you on how to define your custom league in BlueLynx with sub-leagues and divisions per sub-league. So anyway, so here are my teams, and this is how I want my standings to look. So now I'm going to go back to my league sheet and see how to make this happen. So back on this league sheet, we're going to follow this tip here where it says start here, select the league mode. As I've said before in other videos, all these cells with little red triangles in the corner means there's basically a hover tips or hover text. So when you hover on one of these, it'll tell you stuff. So if I hover on this mode, it just talks about the three different league modes. And obviously we're worried about the mode 3 here, the custom league. So I'm going to click in here and I get this little drop down arrow. And I'm going to choose custom league versus manual configuration. And that's true, because once you go custom, it's not going to use the divisions are set up from a NHL historical season. This one's up to you. But, so the first thing it asks is how many teams are in your custom league, and somewhere between 2 and 64. So in my demonstration here, I have 8. So it does a couple of backflips here, and now it's telling me what to do next. This is telling me it's important that I really read and understand this message. So let's actually review it. So the first thing here it says is enter your list of team names and team ID starting in cell C14, which is this cell right here. So you can see what it did was it created this yellow area and gave me the numbers 1 through 8. So it tells me this is where I should be entering my team names. And it also, as you saw there, along with each team's name, you have to have a unique ID. The ID needs to be letters, and I think it's between 2 and 4 characters long is what your team ID can be. But it also says here, leave the division column blank right now. So this division we're going to leave blank. So we're just going to fill in this team and ID. And then it says, after entering your team and IDs, click the Validate League Settings black button. That's this one up here. So we're going to enter our team ID, and once we get those entered, then we can go and click on this Validate League Settings black button. It also here tells us that at any time during the league, you can, in this league configuration process, you can start over by clicking this big orange Reset All League Data button. It'll triple check with you that you really want to do it, but it essentially just brings this whole spreadsheet back to, basically square zero, and you can start over and do whatever you want to do as far as creating your league goes. But, and it's just saying your rosters, it'll tell you when it needs the rosters, but initially it really wants to know about the teams and their setup. And you can also see, it doesn't mention them here, but here's where you then choose your sub-leagues and your divisions per conference and such. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so I've entered all my teams. I have one left. One more ID to enter, but I wanted to show you what happens when I do that. But I did want to mention that I did enter this, include this 1975 Houston Aeros team, this WHA team, as one of my teams in here. And other than that, I wanted to say that what's in common here in this custom league that we're doing is all these teams are historical teams. Now they don't have to be, you could have a totally fictional team of your, you know, beer league team or anything you want to make up, a slapshot team or something. But that's the flexibility you have in the custom league is you can have historical teams with fictional players. You can have fictional teams with fictional players. You can have historical teams with historical players. So you can have a fictional team with historical players. I mean, I could make up my own team and I could have it to be my own, maybe my all-time Toronto Maple Leaf team with different Maple Leafs from different eras. Or I might want to make my 1950s team, and it'll be the all-star guys that played in the 50s, and a team from the 60s, and a team from the 70s, and I could make my rosters like that. So it's totally up to you how you want to do it. The biggest difference is if you use teams that are historical teams, then BlueLynx does offer the hockey reference data file, and I'm going to assume that that you downloaded that, or I shouldn't say you did assume that, but I did um, have that ready for this league because I'm going to be using these historical teams, and because I'm going to use historical teams, I can use that hockey reference data file that's on the BlueLynx Facebook group page to easily load the rosters for these teams, so I don't have to manually enter the rosters. Instead, I can just effectively copy them or automatically load them from that spreadsheet into this league. So I just want to kind of talk a little bit about that, but all everything's basically available in the custom league. It's just a matter of different options have more manual work to be done to make it work. Okay, so now I'm on my last team here. I entered the 2010 Chicago Blackhawks. I'm going to put in their ID, and when I hit enter here, you'll see something happens. One, it it puts in this team colors thing over here, which I'll talk about in a second. And two is it tells me that my list appears to be valid. And what valid means is all these team names are different and all these IDs are fit the rules of ID, being that they're between 2 and 4 characters long, and none of them are the same. So that's what we want. And then it kind of tells us what we're going to do next. It says the next step is to enter or validate various league settings, including the league name, the league ID, which are these up here, and then set up these sub-leagues or conferences and divisions, which are these boxes right here. It says when you click OK, the process of entering and validating these settings will begin. After entering or correcting each item, click the black Validate League Setting button to continue the process. That's this button here, as we did. So once we enter something here, you can always enter something and click this button if you're not sure, and it'll tell you basically what you have to do next, if it's anything. But it'll guide you along the path of entering what you need to do to get your league configured. It's kind of your friend. So let me click OK here. And here it's kind of already checking all these things, and this is where it's telling us this league ID is invalid. And it says you need to enter a league ID between 2 and 10 characters and only letters and numbers. No spaces and such. Okay, so let's fill both of these in. You don't have to just do one at a time. So as I said, the name of my league is going to be this Super 8, my Super 8 league. And then I'll click below it, my ID. I'm just going to call that Super 8. This league ID never really shows up anywhere on in the different sheets. It's all really under the hood, so it doesn't need to look pretty. So don't worry about that. So now I have my name and my ID. I'm going to leave these blank right now, but I'm going to click this black button like it told us to. You can see here it says error that invalid number of sub-leagues. Only one or two are allowed. So finish that. So let's go over here, and it kind of points us here. So again, sub-leagues are like conferences. And remember, you want to kind of think of your standings when you choose this. And if I look back at my little sheet here, cheat sheet, I was going to have this left and right view, which means each side, left side, right side, is a sub-league or a conference. So I'm going to go with two conferences. So that's this option. And then in my divisions per conference, I can have up from 1 to 4. So, but I only need one. If I look at my little thing here, I'm just going to have one division in each conference. It doesn't want total divisions. It's divisions per conference or per sub-league. That's why it says divisions per slash conference. Let me see if it really gives you a better. Yeah, the number of divisions per sub-league, 1 to 4. So, all right, so we're going to say number of divisions per sub-league is going to be 1. So if I click this little drop down, that gives me the choice. It's like we only need one division per sub-league. Okay, now I got that done. And now I'm going to click this button one more time. And it gives me the next error. You know, the next error sounds harsh, but really it's just kind of guiding you along to the next thing you have to enter. It says missing sub-league name. Please fill in the sub-league and division custom names table and retry. The table cells are in column Q. Here's column Q here. So it's telling us to enter them down in this table. Okay. So you can see here, by this entering the league name up here, it copied it down to this thing. So here is now kind of the conferences and division names. So my L conference, or the one that's going to be on the left, I'm just going to call that the Zamboni conference for fun. And I do have to I could pick a name for the division, but really since I only have one division in the conference, it doesn't really, the name of this division doesn't mean much. So I'm just going to write team, and I'll kind of show you why I'm doing that. And my conference, on my right conference, or the right hand side, I'm going to call that the top shelf conference. And for the same reason as the other one, since I only have one division in it, I'm just going to call this division team. I could give it a name here too, but you'll see why it doesn't really. When you look at your, if you think of your standings, you'll see why it doesn't really make that much sense. Okay, so I've entered this. I'll click the button again. Invalid division. It must be 2 characters in length. Please provide. Oh, now I've gotten to the next step of it's past this, and now it says it's essentially telling me I need to assign my teams to the divisions. So if you look right here, this is where the divisions. This is division L1. That's the only one I'm using in this conference, or in division R1, which is in my top shelf conference. So if I go back to my little thing here, this is division L1 because it's in the left side. It's going to be that way in my standings. And this is division R1. And that's why it shows right here, R1 and L1. These NAs are automatically filled in. Once I fill these numbers in here, it knows that you won't have any division 2, 3, and 4 in these conferences. So don't worry about those. So it's not applicable. That's what the NA stands for. So now I can, if I look back at my little cheat sheet, I kind of have these by order. Like the oldest 4 teams are in the left, and the higher years are in the right. So this little drop down for each, it, it knows the only options are L1 and R1. So my first 4 teams here are going to be all L1, and then the next 4 teams, I'm going to pick R1. So, okay, so now I have all my teams assigned their divisions. I'll just click their friendly button again. And now it says no roster data found. So unlock to enter the roster data and retry. So we kind of passed the first part. Now we're on to rosters. So I'm going to click this and we'll see what we have to do next. Okay. Now we need to enter the rosters for our teams. So this, you can see where it's showing the rosters sheet. And this is where the team rosters go. So first I'm going to look at this message or pop-up window that it's giving me some information of how to enter and load team rosters. Step 1, it says unlock the rosters. Yeah, by clicking the pink button. So here you can see here is where it says unlock roster data. Now I can't do it right now because it's this window's still up, so I can't do it yet. But let's just go through what we have to do. So first we've got to unlock it, and 2 is enter the roster data using any of these methods. So there are basically 3 ways to enter the roster data. 1, or A here it says, but the first one is using, if you use historical teams, you can use the load historical team roster, this button up here, to do it. And that's because I have actual historical teams, that's what I'm going to do. But the second one, I'll just describe what these other 2 are. For historical players, which would mean if I had like an all-star team or just a drafted team that had players from different historical teams, like it says Wayne Gretzky and Mike Bossy and Bobby Orr on it, I could try to use the historical data file for that too. Or I could just type them in. It's up to me. And the third option is if you have non-historical teams or basically with non-historical players, you'll just have to enter it yourself manually to type it in. You can either type it in here, or if you have it typed in a different spreadsheet that you want to, maybe you try to copy and paste it in, you could, but either way, you'd have to get it in here. And the last thing it says, not all columns are required, but here's what you need to enter, like this team ID, so you have to know your team ID, a player ID, which has to be unique for each player, the player's first and last name, and then this player name, which is typically first and last name, but this also has to be unique. You can't have 2 players in your league with the same player name. So in a case where you maybe would have that, but let's say you had a Kings team that had Wayne Gretzky and an Oilers team that had Wayne Gretzky. If you want them in your league, you'd have to name those players a little bit differently. Like maybe you have one that's Wayne L.A. Gretzky and Wayne E.D.M. Gretzky or something like that to indicate which team you're talking about. And the same thing with their ID would have to be a little bit different. But anyway, so I'm going to say OK here. And because I want to load these team rosters, what I need to do is make sure I have the hockey reference spreadsheet, basically the BlueLynx hockey reference data sheet open. And if I look here, I do. So here it is. I don't need to really do anything with it. Just make sure it's open. But it contains a lot of historical stuff from all these all these different historical years from the hockeyreference.com. Initially, this has from 1950 up through the 2023-2024 season. And so it has the teams, it knows, you can look farther down here, it knows their divisions and conferences and stuff if we needed to know that, but here we don't really care about that stuff. It knows the rosters and the schedules. So again, we don't care about the schedules here, but what we do care about are these rosters. That's what I'm going to be using. One thing I will also say here, and we go back to my league sheet a second, is that for historical reasons, or just BlueLynx, when BlueLynx refers to historical data, it uses a single year. It doesn't refer to something like you typically do in hockey or even in the NBA, which is say, oh yeah, the 71-72 season, or 95-96 season. But the way it works in BlueLynx is that the year shown is the year effectively that the Stanley Cup was played, or the end of the season, not the beginning, but the end. So this 1963 Maple Leafs is you could think of it as a 1962-63 season, that team. So, but just for simplicity, and I'll say, yeah, just mainly that simplicity, BlueLynx refers to historical teams with a single year, and that's the year of the Stanley Cup or the year that the season ended. Okay, let's get back to now doing our roster stuff. So we'll go back to the roster sheet, and I'm going to first unlock the rosters sheet. You see here it says it's locked. I'm going to click this, and it'll unlock it. And it kind of tells me that, and it says, well, it's unlocked. I can delete a player by double-clicking the cell in column B, like this in here, if I want to. I'll hover on the cell so you can see. So this just kind of says, if you double-click in here, you'll be prompted to delete the player. But it's important to note that it can't be undone. So once you delete somebody, they're gone. There's some other things that just kind of says the player name's got to be unique. This primary position, it's is just a single position. So you just want to put the primary position, but it doesn't. If they play, left D and right D, it doesn't really matter. You can just put one of them and it'll be okay. All right. So as I said here, because I have historical teams, I want to use this historical team roster load button. So I'm going to click this button. Because I have that other spreadsheet open, the BlueLynx Hockey Ref data sheet, that's where it's getting this information from. So what I will do is pick my team. So this is my league. These are the 8 teams in my league I just created. I'll choose the 63 Maple Leafs. Now in here, I'm going to find 1963. So you can see it goes back to 1950. But 63. There are only 6 teams in the league then. I'm going to pick Toronto Maple Leafs. So now up here, it shows 1963 Toronto Maple Leafs. And I want that to match my league, which is this team's name, and this is my ID that I put in. So when these match, I click this load. And it confirms if I want to load these 63 Maple Leafs historical roster for my custom league team, this team with this ID. Yes or no? Yes. And you can see it just drops in these 27 guys that played for the Leafs in 1962 and 3. Then it's just saying, it worked. You can load additional teams or click done. So a couple things I want to say here is I can load additional teams, and I will. But you can see here, as it loads these teams, it may load more than you want. but we'll deal with that in a second. But first, I could just keep going here. If I want to now load, if I look up my list and say, oh, now I want the 72 Bruins, I just switch this to say 72 Bruins. Yes. Load. Yes. And it adds the Bruins down there. And I'm just going to finish this up for the rest of my teams, and we'll pick up the video from there. Okay, I've loaded all my historical rosters into my roster sheet. So let's see what we're going to do next. There's a couple things to do here, and in general, I'd say if you're going to load historical rosters, you may need to modify them for two reasons. One is that a team may have players on it that you don't have in your game. Like, let's take, for instance, this Toronto team from 1960, what did I say, 63? So there's 27 guys here I can see. And maybe the game I only have 22 players on my 63 Toronto team. So I could find, okay, who are the five guys here that I don't have that I can't play anyway. So I could basically I just want to I could delete them. So I'm not that familiar with the 63 Maple Leafs, but let me see if I can look at something to kind of figure them out. But the point is, what you can do there is you delete guys that you don't have. Like this guy, if I find this guy Bruce Draper, if I'm looking on hockeyreference.com, this guy played in only one game. So I'm going to guess that people don't have. So I'm going to delete this guy. So if you recall this first column over here, this is kind of the easy delete thing. So if you double click in this column, it'll prompt you to delete somebody. So if I find Bruce Draper, which is he's number 9 here, I'm going to double click and it'll say, do you want to delete Bruce Draper? This can't be undone. It defaults to no, but I'm going to say yes, delete this guy. And then he's gone. And similarly, this Rod Sealing only played in one game, so I could delete him because I don't have him. I'm looking at the hockey reference just to kind of see who would probably not be in somebody's game, but you could just look at your cards or your game and you could maybe easily tell which players you don't have that you could delete from your game. So that's one thing you could do. And I'd say I would recommend that you kind of pare it down to reflect your game just so that you don't have situations where you're looking at, either playing somebody or basically just wasting your time looking at maybe trying to bring in a substitute for an injured player or somebody that you don't even have in your game. So why even worry about them? So you'd have to do that for each team, and however you want to do that. I also wanted to mention here that one of my teams was this 1975 Houston Aeros, which was the WHA, because that hockey reference data file does include the NHL and the WHA teams in it, so that's also an option. Okay, but once I go through and delete those guys I don't have in my game for each of my teams, the next thing I'm going to do is click this validate and lock. And what it's going to do is make sure I don't have any players that were on two teams. Like I said, and this is only really a problem if you're loading these historical rosters. If you had to do this manually, you would just have to type in all your players, which can be a little bit tedious, but once you got them in there, you're good to go. But because I imported all my rosters from the historical data file, it's possible that some player played on two of these teams that I chose. So I'm going to click this validate and lock. And sure enough, well, this is a good example. This is a duplicate lineup name was found, Billy Harris. So correct and retry. And this is really just kind of telling me the same thing I already did, but the roster isn't valid. Okay. So when it finds an error, it hides all the other rows and it just shows you the two that are causing a problem. Now it only shows one error at a time. So if it found there might be four players maybe that had duplicates, it's only going to show. It stops when it hits the first one, and it shows you that. And once you fix this one, it could show you another one. So it doesn't show you all the errors at once. That's just kind of how it works. So a couple things I want to show with this Billy Harris. So one, so this Toronto team was in the 60s. This Islanders team is 1980. It's possible that somebody, but if I look here in this player ID column, I see that they're different. Which that tells me, and these IDs come from hockeyreference.com. This tells me that, it's not the same player, in real life. So it really isn't the same guy. But in hockeyreference.com and in BlueLynx, it really only makes sure that each season all the players' names are unique. It doesn't check them across all years, which is that's really impossible. But because I'm putting these two guys in the same league, I need to change one of these or both of these player names so that they're unique. Like I said, these player IDs are already different, so I don't have to change those at all. But it's just this. So there's a couple ways to do it. I could just, I'm going to click Billy Harris's name, and up here I could, if I want, maybe I could put, you know, a parentheses T for Toronto at the end of his name if I wanted to, or I could maybe put it in the, in the middle here if I wanted to, or maybe I don't even use the parenthesis, or I could just put TOR. And however you want to do it, it doesn't really matter. But it's just kind of what's a convenient way to, because when it's showing somebody in a lineup or maybe in the league leaders or something, you can look at it and know what Billy Harris is talking about. Because you probably won't want to just look at this ID to know. So I'm gonna do it like this and put this T for Toronto. Now maybe I'll put like this. His name isn't that long. And then for this guy that's on the Islanders, I'll do the same thing. Like that. Okay, so once I set them like that, that should fix this. So now I'm just going to click this validate and lock again and see what happens. Well, now it found a different problem. This Uwe Krupp is a duplicate. But since it didn't tell me about Billy Harris, I'm going to assume that that fix was good. So these are just the same errors. So this Uwe Krupp, or Uwe, however you say his name, he really did it. This is the same guy because this ID is the same. So now we have to fix the ID and the player name. So again, you can just change one if you want, but I like to change them both so that I know what it is. So this one I'm just going to say, I'm just going to put the C at the end of it because I know this is Colorado. And this one I'm going to put D for Detroit at the end of it. And for his name, I'm just going to put that like this. Oh, his name's short. I'll do it like that. But feel free to use whatever creativity you want to use to name your guys. Okay, so now I changed both of these IDs and now their names. So now I'm going to do the same step again and kind of just rinse and repeat until you get through all your conflicts. Okay, great. So now it says my roster data is valid, and your roster data will now be locked. If you need to make additional roster changes, you must unlock the rosters and make your changes and then revalidate it. So if your rosters are now complete, then go back to the league sheet and click the Validate League Settings button again our favorite black button to keep going. Okay, so that's what we'll do. So now we have our rosters set. I do think I'll show one thing here, which is when you use historical rosters, it for guys that played for multiple teams in one season, it shows this. In a custom league, this doesn't mean anything. It doesn't care about it and doesn't use it, but just for I guess for understanding why it's here, what it is, it's just you can tell here that it lists the teams that they played for and the order that they played for them. Like this tells me Ivan Voldarev started out with the Bruins, but got traded to the California Golden Seals sometime during the year, along with, I guess, Rick Smith and Bob Stewart and Reggie Leach. It must have been all that just to get Carol Vadnais. So I'm not sure if that was really how the trade went down, but that's kind of how it looks. But anyway, that's what this multi-team list, what that means from it when you load the historical rosters, but it has no impact uh, on how this roster is used by BlueLynx. So we are again our rosters are now locked. It told us to go back to the league sheet and validate. So let's do that. Okay, back on the league sheet, we're going back to our favorite button, the Validate League Settings button. So we're going to click it again now that our rosters are good. And it's going through some backflips, and it gives us some good news that our standings have been successfully configured for the league. So you can see here's the name of the name of the league that I created. Here are the names of the conferences. This is Zamboni and the Top Shelf. You can see here are the teams in each of these, the one division in each one. And you can see here's that word team, and this is the name of this division. And that's why I chose the word team for the division, because, to have a conference and a division with in the same, it doesn't really, if you only have one division in a conference, then effectively the conference is the division. So you don't really need them both. That's why I just said use team, because that makes it look not so stupid. So anyway, so this just kind of confirms what we've got for our standings and league setup. So I'm going to say, okay, looks good. Well, one thing I will also say here is, depending on how your league is set up, whether you're going to have ties or overtime losses, or you can decide what you want to show in your league. You just want to hide these IDs. There's a few things you can show or hide in your standings. Okay. Great. Now we've got successes. Our league configuration appears to be valid. I think we're essentially, on the home stretch here. So the next step is to lock your league settings, and you have to lock your league before you can start playing any games in it. And when you lock it, it really means that there's several things you can't change, and that's especially the number of teams with their names, their IDs. You can't change any player IDs or lineup names, and you can't remove players from the league for historical stats reasons. And you can't change your standing structure. You can't move a team from one division to another, or things like that. So but there are some things you can do if you wanted to, like in a custom league, which is, we didn't really even assign any team colors yet, so you can do that anytime you want and change them. You could change a player's position if you want to. You can add games to the schedule, which we didn't even talk about yet. You can add a player to a team roster, or you could change the team of roster. You could have your own trades, and all of a sudden just say, okay, now this guy, you go to the roster sheet, unlock it, and you could switch their team to a different team in your league. Like he gets traded. So it is flexible in that regard. That those things can change during your league season. But it also says you have to lock your sheet before you can use your score sheet. So I'm going to say, yeah, we're ready. I'm going to lock these league settings. So I click yes. And it tells me some more good news. And it tells me that it's going to configure the score sheet to work with this league mode. It also tells me that I'm going to need to have at least one game on the schedule to play a game, and I should have a default starting lineup configured on the league lineup sheet before I can play a game. Okay. So it's, up here you can see where it says the score sheet mode, and here's where it says it's in CSTM, which is League Custom League. So it kind of knows what type of league this is. It's been activated. I can click the game ID to load a game if I had one. That's up here where I would click and I could load a game into this score sheet. The next thing it's doing is, well, wait till it's done. So now it's telling me this looks really good. And some final considerations would be one, set these team default starting lineups like it already told me once, and to put a game on the schedule, which it also told me once. So other than that, it says the score sheet is ready. Okay. So it kind of ends up on this league lineup sheet. And here are all the 8 teams in my league. If I click on one of these, it'll expand it. So here you can see this, well, this lineup sheet, or lineup, I guess you can call it lineup sheet, lineup section. But all the teams are going to have blank lineups. If I click on a team, it'll kind of expand them and collapse the other teams. And I'm going to make another video talking about these lineups. But for now, hit this collapse all. That has all my that. The last thing I want to talk about here for the custom league is the schedule. So let's go over there and we'll take a look and see how that works. So here we are on the schedule sheet, and it's blank because we don't have any games scheduled for this league yet. But that's what we're gonna. But let's change that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, it's kind of like the roster. There's a lock and unlock, and we need to unlock it to work on it. So I'm gonna click the unlock thing here, and it'll say, tell me it's now unlocked. And while it's unlocked, we can't load anything in the score sheet. For custom league, the yellow column headers indicate required fields. So that's important for what we're doing right now. That when I want to schedule a game, really all I need are these 5 columns. So let's see how that works. So I'm going to say, look at my teams. Let's say my first game is Toronto is visiting the Edmonton Oilers. Again, these cells with the red triangles have some tips. And these sim game notes, I don't need any worry about that. That's after I play them, it'll fill these in. But the sim game number is required, and this really needs to indicate the order of the games. Not necessarily the games, the order you play them, but order that they should be played in, I guess, or should occur. And it needs that so that it can, for 2 things. One, to know what your, like, for any kind of streak type of thing. So part of the standings, it shows like what your last record in your last 10 games is. So it needs to know, uses this to know the order of the games. So what are the last 10? It needs to know it. Similarly, if you're keeping track of injuries, and this thing has an injury chart tab, it needs to know the order of these games so it knows when a player has basically when their injury is over. So this column should, I'm just thinking, it should just start with 1 and increase by 1 for each game, because this is kind of the order of the games in your season. So I want to say start with season game number 1. This game type, I'll cover. It can have 2 things, regular or postseason. I really don't have the postseason part working yet, but if you leave it blank, it'll assume it's going to be R for regular season game, or you can put an R. I'll do it blank just to kind of show you how that works. This game ID, like I said, it's auto-populated if you're using a historical league, but we're not. So for a custom, league, we got to put something in here. And you can make it as simple or as savvy as you want. The simplest thing would be just use the game number that I could, because it has to be unique for every game. So I could just put a one. Maybe I might want to say it's going to be one colon, and then the visitor, which here I'm going to say is Toronto uh, versus whoever the home team is Edmonton. So maybe that way when I look at this game ID, I can see who played in it. But that is that's only if that's the way you want to do it. So I'm not saying you have to do it like this. Some people like it so that the game ID you can tell if I'm looking at a game ID in my stat thing of who the game was, or I can tell something by looking at this ID. If I just have a number, I'd have to go look at the schedule and see who played in game one, and I can figure it out. So it's up to you how you want to do it. So here I'm going to say my visiting team ID is Toronto, and I have to use my IDs here. And these green ones, it'll fill this in automatically, so you just ignore it. And the home team here is Edmonton, like this. So once I fill one in, and that's all I need for a game, I can click this lock. Let's do it now. And it does a couple things. Let's see. Okay, it's just saying you kind of always edit these sim game notes, but you don't need to worry about it right now. So when I locked it, you can see it filled in these columns, like what this team is. I can see here this is a good test for the length of my team names. But in it'll keep track of, this is the visitors game number one. This is also what it uses this game number for, is it knows, so it can figure these numbers out. So let's just put in another one here. Whoops. And that's because it's locked, so I can't do that. So I have to unlock it, and you can put in multiple games at once too. So here I can put in. You don't have to follow the same convention you did before, but it probably makes sense to have some consistent thing. So I'm going to say this is Boston versus Colorado. And this could be my next one of Houston versus Detroit. And then my fourth game would be the Islanders versus the Blackhawks. Oops. There we go. Oh, I'm going to show you something. Let's just say I put CBH for Chicago Blackhawks by accident. And when I click lock, I get an error here, and it says invalid home team ID CBH. On the sheet for game ID for blah blah blah. So it's telling me it's like game 4. Fix this, and that's because I put the wrong thing here. The other thing I can't do is if I put the Islanders there and I lock it, it'll say the home and the visitor IDs are the same. You can't have that either. So it does a little bit of some checking. It can't fix all your mistakes, but for some it does. It makes sure that your IDs are legit, so that it knows what team you're talking about. So now let's try this one more time, and it should work. Now it says it's valid. And the other thing I want to say with custom schedules is you can fill these out as you go. You can do one game at a time. You could put, like in here, if I have 8 teams, I might want to put 4 games at a time, so each team's got their next game. Maybe I want to have a home and home type schedule, so I'd put in 8 games at a time with, Toronto versus Edmonton and Edmonton versus Toronto, so they switch back and forth because great thing about tabletop hockey and all the tabletop games is that you know travel time doesn't mean much. So you could maybe want to set your schedule up like that. So you have like, or maybe you want to have a little series or something like that. However you want to do it, but the point is, you can completely build your schedule as you go. You don't have to have it all figured out at the beginning. So you could just do one game, one series, a couple games, play it, add your next game. And as you go along, you can just keep filling in your schedule and then play it as you go. Okay, so that is all I want to say about how to create a custom league. It's not how to create every custom league, that's for sure, because you can have lots of different variations of that with how your rosters are made up and teams with, you know, between these historical rosters, which are kind of the, I'll call it the easy way, because you can take advantage of using the hockey reference data file to pretty much start off with your roster almost done, and all you have to really do is delete the guys you don't want. And I'd say that's the simplest. One more thing I'll say about the rosters, I'm just talking about them, is maybe I'll make a separate video, but there is a way to use the hockey reference data file to just copy one player at a time from that hockey reference data file into your rosters sheet. And you'd have to figure out if that's worth the effort. You have to kind of find the player on a team, and then you can kind of copy and paste it in. It just kind of, all it really saves you is, it gives them an ID, puts in, their first name, last name, their name, so it's going to have their name spelled right, and their position. So I might make a little video about that later if that's something that people might want to do, but you can always just type it yourself also. So anyway, that's the end of this, how to set up a custom league. Again, it's only one scenario for a custom league, but it covers all the basic steps involved in creating a custom league. And so from here, you kind of carry on with a couple more steps before you start playing your games, which would be setting up your lineups. And I'll have another video about messing with the team colors. And the last one would be figuring out what stats you want to keep for your players. But those are in a different video. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. And like Red Green says, keep your stick on the ice.